I would start with this question. How's the wind? How's the wind in your life? And when you think of wind, you think of a few things. Number one, you can't see it. Number one, you probably thought of a boat with sails. Number two, you probably thought of maybe, a gentle breeze that's beautiful out in the sun in the lilac paddock. Or you've had a trauma because of the wind. But the wind you can't really see, but you can see what it does to the things around you. So if you're inside and I ask you that question, even if you're driving, if you're sitting in an office and I ask, how's the wind? You don't really have to go to the Weather Channel. You just look outside. I had a little boat, 14 footer, 15 horsepower, little fishing boat. And you could tell if it was windy where I lived, but until you got out to where the water was, the river was, you could actually see that there was actually whitecap. So I kind of made the line in the sand for me to go boating is if I don't see white caps and it's windy, then I will go boating. If I see white caps, I would actually turn around because it's just not as fun as it needs to be. I had a small boat and it's just not what I would want to do in my fishing. So that's kind of, you can tell by what the wind is doing. And so I ask you that question again, how's the wind? How's the wind in your life? And I want to go into two sides of the wind. Is one is this inner peace, and this other side is what I'm trying to fix and control. There's two opposing forces. They're both on different sides of the spectrum, and the wind can be in the middle. I had a little bit of trauma with the wind. I guess there's always trauma with the wind. They're usually called tornadoes or hurricanes or whatever. People live in like hurricane country. You got to sacrifice beauty and majesty for a little bit of wind sometimes, because most of those people are on a sunny beach somewhere in that vicinity. And but we had a tornado come through our neighborhood. We were up top of the hill. Like if you know Orleans, there's down the hill, up the hill. We lived down the hill, but we were up the hill, and they were saying this tornadoes ripping through Orleans. We look outside, and you wouldn't even think that there's any wind. I would have said people are lying. This is a joke. So we heard it was all over. We wanted to go down see our house, and as soon as we got near our house, it was like ground zero. There was people out. There was building materials from a big building that was strewn everywhere, like that insulation, the batting for insulation was everywhere. Roofs, cars, like it was people in the road. Like it was a mess. It was like literally ground zero. And we had found out that the tornado actually went through our backyard, through the field, through our backyard, and hit our house. Me and my neighbor. So my little fishing boat, it was sideways. The shed was turned over. The barbecue, we had one of those crab apple trees that was in bloom, and it was leaning on had knocked down our fence and into my neighbor's yard, and it was a very strong wind that affected our lives. And then you get to call the insurance company and all that. So when I look at this in my own life, like the wind is never not going to be there. Some days it's light, some days it startles you by how strong it was because you didn't really see it. But the wind is always going to be there. I look at the wind as this cause of an internal problem. It's going to bring out what's inside of me. And so we look at this internal problem, and you might hear the word in recovery circles as a spiritual malady. A malady is actually another way of saying disease. Another way of saying it is how sick I am. We see that in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. A sick person is really what I'm talking about is a disconnected person. We don't like to judge or label anybody, but there are people that are disconnected and there are people that are connected. That's the difference of when the wind is blowing. Do I have internal peace, or am I trying to fix and control things on the outside? And we look at these two sides as number one is fear. So I have my position in life. I'm the actor. I need direction from the director. And so in this way of controlling, fixing, of being in fear, I'm the actor, the director, and the producer. In the big book, it says We are producers of chaos, confusion and chaos. So that's what happens internally when I'm trying to live out of fear, when I'm not trying to, when I am living out of fear. And this is how I play God. And this is how I deal with the wind, and it never ends well. It always ends in this internal hurricane, tornado, derecho. That's a new word. I'll get to that at the end. The other way is when the wind is blowing, I'm actually rooted in love. And so if my tree in the backyard was rooted deeper, we would still probably have a tree. And it's like rooted in love, I can withstand the storm, the wind. Um, I remember going into a treatment center after not being able to take my own life successfully, and definitely not being able to live. I'm at a homeless shelter, and I remember going in there, didn't know what they were going to suggest or treat me or give me medication. I didn't really know what they were going to do at this treatment center that was in the homeless shelter. But I remember saying, I just need this to stop. And that's what rooted in God's love has caused in my head and my heart. It's actually caused the noise of the wind to stop. It doesn't mean the wind hasn't stopped. It doesn't mean that there's gentle wind and hard wind and all that stuff. But internally, I am rooted so that the wind doesn't take me out. It's called peace. So if I'm the producer, I'm producing chaos. If I'm just the actor getting my directions and having the producer produce, that's not me. I get stillness. I get peace. God says, I want you to lay down and be still. And that was very hard for somebody that has this internal storm on the inside. I just want to read a preface. It's called The Doctor's Opinion in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says, we feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than an altruistic movement now growing up among them. And so this is the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, where they're treating this disease, this malady, this internal condition. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. And that false thing is this mental part that we all have as alcoholics or addicts. And it's this insanity. That's the insanity that we're talking about. You see, it's a state of mind. It just happens when the wind is blowing, all of a sudden, I can't see the truth from the false. And this insanity happens inside of me. Sometimes it's suddenly. We look at a story, Jim, and he was, in recovery, and he went on his little sales trip, and he thought it was a good idea to have milk with his lunch, his sandwich, and then a state of mind happened, and it was called suddenly. Suddenly he thought that putting alcohol in the milk would be a good idea because he just wanted to feel something different. He wanted to feel ease and comfort. He wanted to feel peace, but his insanity caused him to put alcohol in his milk. That's just plain insanity. Suddenly, a change of mind because he's not rooted in the love of God. And so when the wind is blowing, what's going to happen internally? If I'm not deep rooted, I'm going to fall over. I'm going to relapse. I'm going to slip. I'm going to have a state of mind which causes me to say that this is going to be okay this time. It's going to be different this time. It's this mental obsession that happens, rooted in fear. We talk about the jaywalker. There's a story right after that, and that's the insanity. That's not being able to tell the truth from the false. And it goes that story goes like this, where there's a jaywalker. He crosses the street, gets hit by a bus. He gets some bruises and scrapes. A week later, he does the same thing, gets hit by a tractor trailer. The next week, he gets hit by I don't know what's bigger than a tractor trailer. And he suffers serious consequences. And he goes to the hospital and he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. And he can't tell the truth from the false. And that's this mental obsession that he has to cross the street. But it's no different from my mental obsession that when the storm is brewing, when the wind is blowing, I'm rooted in fear. And so I'm going to be like the jaywalker doing the same thing over and over again, convincing myself that I'm not, convincing myself that it gives me this sense of ease and comfort, that it actually is real ease and comfort, but it's not. How's the wind in your life today? What are the signs that it's blowing on the inside and not just the outside? To them, the alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. And this is the sign that the wind's blowing on the inside. Are you irritable, restless, and discontented? Does life not suit you right now? Drinks which they see others taking with impunity, or living life like normal people without impunity, or with the thought that it's not, they have no impunities or damage or consequences or negative results. After they have succumbed to the desire again, like so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through this well-known stages of spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over unless this person can have an experience an entire psychic change. There's very little hope in his recovery. So it's looking at this mental insanity part that is rooted in fear caused by the storms on the outside. And then when I succumb to it, I have this physical desire that compulses me, that when I start, I can't stop. And that could be pornography, that could be your phone, that could be food, that could be whatever it is, drugs and alcohol, relationships, whatever it is, that compulsivity that I can't stop when I want to, that I keep going back to it. And it says, like, forget all that. But because there's no solution, there's no hope, there's no pill, there's no medication, there's no, like, lobotomy. It's not even going to help me. Well, maybe it would help me. But you need a psychic change, a whole psychic change. That is an inexplicable by the law of nature. We can't explain what happens on the inside. There's no explanation except a movement of God. Like, that's the only, like, a full psychic change happens by the power of God. So I go from trying to control and fix the wind and the damage that it might or might not do to having this peaceful inside. That's a full psychic change. If we go to page 164, we read that same concept. It talks about this spiritual disease. It talks about resentments. It's the number one offender. It destroys more of us than anything else. Even resentment destroys us more than alcohol, drugs, or relationships. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. We have been not only physically and mentally ill, we've been spiritually sick. And I describe being spiritually sick as being separated from God, being rooted in fear is what I look at as spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. And that's a beautiful thing. It's saying, like, forget about the physical and the manifestation of this compulsion that you have. Like, maybe you need to go to detox or rehab for a little bit. But the key is to address the spiritual sickness. And that's how I get this psychic change, this overhaul on the internal side of me. We look at how I get rooted in this. We go through a process. We go through this inventory process, and this is starting to have this spiritual effect inside of me. The psychic change starts happening when I'm recognizing the things inside of me as being objectionable. All of the things that I've done, all the things that I get, that my go-tos, my selfishness, my self-centeredness, all of these things inside of me, my hurt, my frustration, my pain, that's tormenting me on the inside and harassing others on the outside, and I bring it to the altar of my heart for God to take away the good and the bad in a 7-step prayer. And then I go through my amends, and this is how I start to come into this awakening and this total psychic change. And I start to be rooted in God's love, because I've asked him to remove all the stuff on the inside, and now my roots hold different ground. So now my fuel becomes spiritual activity, giving back to others, giving monetarily, giving of my time, helping helping people move. reading my Bible, sitting in prayer meditation, studying the Word of God, being around a fellowship where I'm actually plugged into. All of those things are spiritual activities which help my roots be rooted for when the storm of life comes back. Because it's always going to come back. There's always going to be a reason for my roots to be tested. When my roots are deep, I don't fear the wind. So, do you have deep roots? Because fear is the igniter of the mental obsession of the insanity, which brings me back to, looking to control and fix the outside, trying to manage the wind. But if my roots are deep, I don't fear the wind. So the fear never comes up. And this is where we get this one day at a time in relationship with God as my roots go deep every morning in prayer and meditation and seeking his voice as the director, as my employer, as my principal, as my father. And this is a daily practice. This is first thing in the morning. And then I don't fear the wind that may or may not come that day, but I'm ready for it no matter what it is. And my one of my mentors, he said, "Blessed are the bendable, for they do not break or snap or be uprooted." And this is how I do it to defend against the wind, the spiritual malady, the spiritual disconnect from God, is that I'm connected to him on a daily basis. And so that might be your first 5 hours every day. That might be your first, 10 minutes. That might be your first 10, maybe for you to withstand the storm. And at the very beginning, this is all you do is pursue this relationship with God, is do recovery, is help others, be a professional volunteer. I don't know what that looks like for you, but this is what it's rooted in, is this new attitude. And so as I pursue this relationship with God, I get this new attitude. And here it is, written on page 55. We found that the great reality deep down inside with us, in the last analysis, it's only there that he may be found. So it was with us that God is within. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away any prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourage you to search diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. And that's my part, is just be willing to have a relationship with God on a daily basis. And that's a whole different attitude. And that's how I get deep roots. And I remember at where we are at the kombucha brewery, the church, Union City Church, Carlington Booch. We took about 3 months to renovate the whole place. There was walls that we had to take down. There was painting. There was, setup of kitchen, plumbing, all the electrical, all the things. And we opened on a Thursday. I do believe it was a Thursday. And we were open for one day, and then a derecho came through. I still don't really know what a derecho is, but it's not good. It's like a really strong wind. I forget the classifications, but it's not good. And it came through our business park, tore down every power line. So on our second day of being open, we had no power. We had a generator. We were generating, keeping the fridges cold. Like, there's a bit of a worry because we have a product that, needs to be cool. Otherwise, the yeast will re-engage and we get exploding kombuchas. And this is our second day open. So the power is out everywhere. And we had to get the gas enough to keep in the generator for the generator to keep going. And so we were starting the generator through shifts because the gas can't take would only last for about 2 hours or so. And then we would have about a 3 or 5 hour break. But the lights are down everywhere, so it's chaos. It's not easy to even get into the business park. And then what I was realizing, the gas stations were running out of gas. And it's like, no one planned for this, but at the same time, it didn't consume us and we didn't go bankrupt. We just dealt with what we needed to deal with. It took a lot of our time and energy. We had to change our patterns on what we did and how we lived. But I believe that's being deep rooted. No matter what storm comes at you, no matter how hard the wind's blowing, It's if I have deep enough roots, I'm going to withstand the storm. And that's something that I've never been able to do in my addicted life. That I just tapped out and would go drinking. I would just tap out and go to get drugs or whatever it was. I would just go to the pub. I just can't deal with this. And that's part of my insanity is I need a break. I know how to do it. And that's an insane thing because that's not a break. That's not a holiday. That's addiction. But that's what happened in my mind.